Okay, so now that we've done the retargeting onto the control rig, right, we have created a base animation layers. Literally, it's the blue box, control rig, add to anim layer, and we'll get our base animation. And the base animation is what carries all that heavy keyframe and all that heavy data. So if we want to do some of just the key poses, keep some of the key poses on our control rig, we don't need to carry all of that. The easiest way to do that is, again, with animation layers, and just creating a new animation layer. Before we create it, we want to make sure that we select the IK and the FK. And then I'll just go back to my layer editor here and just create a new layer. And I'll call it poses. By default, the layer that you're creating is in additive mode. Right? If I do select the layer node here, we'll see that override is set to off. So it's by default an additive. So if I start keying this, it's going to add to the current animation. I want to take that off and I want it to put it to override. So it's going to override my animation. And because there's no animation in my pose layer, it's going back to 0, which is exactly what we would expect. The weight can be set to 0 on that particular animation layer. So even though it's an override layer, because the weight is set to 0, it's still going to read in from that base animation. But what it will allow us to do is very quickly set or select some key poses to work with. And very simply, we'll just go back to our character control. We're going to select the IK and the FK, and we're going to just pick a few keyframes that we want, a few key poses, and start just setting keyframe. So I just have them selected, and I'm just literally pressing S. All right, so this isn't really an animation tutorial, so I'm just selecting, kind of random keyframes here. And we can go on and so on and so forth. Once we're happy with this, we're just going to set the weight back to 1. And because it's an override mode, right, I'm basically going to override my animation. And we have all our key poses, which we can create cycles with and which we can start animating. So very quickly, we see something like the hands would probably be very useful to do something like that. So there you go. Now that we've looked at some of the animation, let's look at some of the mel commands we'll be needing to put HIK in our pipeline.